What's up, SC Nation? Ramsey here. A few years ago, when I first started this podcast and website, I wrote a blog. It's called The Confusing Titles of Engineers in Sales. And it's been a few years. It's gotten some traction. It's been plagiarized, which is, I take as a compliment. And I'm looking back at it and it sucks. So it's been plagiarized, but it sucks. I had like 5 titles on there. Pre-sales, post-sales. So I wanted to go over it again. I wanted to actually discuss, because I still get those questions like, hey, what should I be looking for on LinkedIn or Indeed or wherever it is that I search for jobs? What titles should I look at? What do they do? So I figured, hey, let's just talk about them again in a better fashion than I did 4 years ago, because I've grown a lot mentally, physically, sidewaysly. Anyways, let's talk about it. So when we're talking about sales, I see it as like there's 3 functions: pre-sales, sales, post-sales. Pre-sales is sales engineering, that sort of thing. Post-sales are also related to sales, because although they're not quota driven or quota, I guess driven is a good word, because they're not quota driven, they're just there to support the customer, but they could lead to upselling and more sales. So I always want to talk about them. And also in some companies, post-sales is a function or a part of the sales department. And we're going to talk about sales because, well, I'll share that story in a bit. So let's start off with pre-sales functions. Titles, and I have a list up here, more than 5. Sales engineering, most people know about it. Pre-sales engineering, I don't see a lot of that. I see pre-sales, but there's also pre-sales engineering that some companies put. System engineering, that's the first role that I actually applied to and received as a sales engineer. Systems engineer actually means sales engineer. It could mean other things, and I'll get to that in a second. Customer engineer, that's a Google thing. They call their sales engineers, customer engineers. You have application engineers, which I find at legacy companies that do more hardware than software, like RF or stuff like that. There's still application engineers. Solution architect, it's popular in many places, but I see it mostly at AWS, but it could also mean post-sales, and I'll explain that in a second. There's solution consultant and solution engineer. There might be more. In 4 years, I might update this and put more names, more titles on there. But all of these point to the person, aka human being, if you will, whose job is to basically solve customers' business problems through technology. In the previous blog, I said, actually, I'll put a snippet up here. Person responsible for helping an account manager sell the products that are in their portfolio. Somewhat true. I prefer my new definition. We're not helpers. We're not assistants. We're not there to do whatever the salesperson wants. I have videos which I'll link somewhere about the role of the sales engineer. So if you want to check that out, check that out. Calling sales engineers helpers is like calling Rob Gronkowski a helper to Tom Brady. I mean, sure, they helped each other, but it wasn't Gronk's job to help Tom Brady. It was Gronk's job to get open and Tom's job to pass them the ball, and they could win together. The same thing with sales engineering and sales, where the sales engineer's job is to do the technical part of the sales role, which is not just answering technical questions. Again, check out some of the links. Check out the YouTube channel. There's a lot of information there about the role of the sales engineer. So we do a lot more than just help the salesperson. So that opinion has changed since 4 years ago. I wanted to touch on a couple of different titles: systems engineer and solution architect. Systems engineer is a title used for sales engineers, which I don't like. I actually, even though it was my first title, whenever I went to meet customers, I tell them, hey, I'm the systems engineer. And they look at me funny and they say, don't worry, I'm a sales engineer. It means sales engineer. Because systems engineer could also be someone who's working in R&D. The systems engineer could be a senior person in R&D who's actually thinking about how system works together, system design, which is why they're called systems engineer. And also, when I introduce myself as systems engineer, the real systems engineer would look disappointed and feel like I stole their title. Let's go into solution architect. This could also be a post-sales role. in my previous role, I was a network design engineer. And my title was network design, but the seniors amongst the team, those who took the most complicated designs, most complicated problems, their title was solution architect. So it could be post-sales, it could be pre-sales. My advice to anyone who cares to listen to my advice is, when you're out there looking for a job, search for the titles. I listed 8. But also look at the job description, make sure it is what you want to do. Because even when you're talking about sales engineering, there are different types of sales engineers. Inside sales, outside sales. Each company has sales engineering done differently. So look at that. And always you want to kind of figure that out as you're talking to the hiring manager. What kind of sales engineer would you be wanting? Anywho, let's move on. Let's talk about sales. Because salespeople also have different titles. And when I first interviewed for my first SE job, the systems engineer job, I was asked, what would you do if your RSM does something that is incorrect or says something that's incorrect? Now, you can see the hamster wheels turning in my head at that point because I had no idea what RSM stands for or means. And even if you told me it means regional sales manager, I wouldn't have known what that meant. It's like, you mean sales guy? It's like, okay. And I honestly didn't know the difference between salespeople, and sales engineers. So that's something else that I learned throughout my 8-year sales engineering career. I still got the job, which is good. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. So in order to help you avoid those gear spinning in your head during interviews, here are a few more titles. You have regional sales manager, which I already mentioned. The reason they're called regional sales manager is because they cover a territory, a region, and they manage the sales process. So regional sales manager. There's also account managers. This is kind of given to, again, people who manage accounts. It could be seen also as account managers are those who cover existing accounts. And then you have account executive, which is a prestigious title, if you will, for people who cover like new accounts or big accounts. Like if someone is covering Verizon Wireless, for example, or someone is selling into Google or Amazon. These are account executives. They're executives, although they do the same thing. Then you have the it's not a title, salesperson. It's not a title. It's just a function, I guess. But some people say I'm the salesperson. They don't identify themselves as a title. One weird one I've seen, even in my current company, that they've recently changed it, was field engineer for salespeople. I don't understand why. I think it provided a little bit of credibility to the salespeople until they started talking again, I guess. And they realized, no, I'm in sales. And then you have post-sales. The reason I want to include post-sales in the pre-sales function is because a lot of times there's a separate post-sales function, not support, something in between the sales and support. And it leads to more sales, but also the salespeople are very dependent on the post-sales folks because especially if the salesperson is working with repeat customers and they want to make sure that the customer is happy so they continue to buy more stuff. So there's always that work together. So let's start with field service engineer. It's FSE. They're considered the first line of support. They don't report to the salesperson, but they kind of take their cues from salespeople, and they could cover more than one salesperson or one sales engineer or one territory. So if there's like 5 different territories, there could be, and with 5 different territories with 5 different salespeople, there could be one field service engineer. And if a customer sends a question in, they're the people trying to help out and figure out an answer. They're the ones who might open up tickets for their customers. So it's very reactive in that sense. Then you have professional service engineer, or implementations engineer. These could be different functions, but I see them as one. ProServe, if you've ever heard the term ProServe, these are paid services. So a company buys a solution from a vendor, and they buy on top of that services that will help them either implement it or teach them the product. So there you end up working with a professional service engineer, pro serve engineer, or implementations engineer if it's just like putting things together. And these are great roles, by the way, if you're looking to step into sales engineering. And one of these roles is available. Sales engineering is not. This is a good role to start your. It's kind of like the training wheels for sales engineering, because you get to deal a lot with customers, and then you get to deal a lot with the sales team. So you get to build relationships there, and hopefully through those relationships you can find a job as a sales engineer if that's what you want. Then you have resident engineer. Again, it's a paid service where they pay for some human being's time to either be on site or remote, to just help them out with their products, with their solutions. So let's say someone works at Nokia. Nokia sold a solution to Verizon Wireless. That's kind of what I did early on in my network design engineer. I was offered as a SME to Verizon Wireless, where my job was to answer questions. That's pretty much it. Pro Serve is kind of a limited time function where you go in for 3 weeks, do the thing, get out. Resident engineer could be a year, could be 2 years, could be a renewable contract as well. There's also solution architect, which I mentioned earlier. Go back and listen to that. Customer success, somewhat a new role. Their job is to take over from sales after the sale is done. So the salesperson, the sales engineer, they worked with a customer to sell the thing, and then transition it to the customer success team to make sure that the implementation is done. If there is professional services, they have to manage that. If there's issues, tickets happening, they could jump in and try to solve it, or they can open tickets, make sure it is solved. And it's kind of like a subscription. It's a paid service in most companies where you're paying for a customer success to come and do the job. Some companies might not have it paid, and it's just in their interest to support their customers. And last title I want to talk about is Technical Account Manager, aka TAM. If you've ever heard the term TAM, it's somewhat like an FSE, field service engineer, but it's paid, used on strategic customers or paying customers. They're also the first line of support. They're the ones doing the work for, like the hands-on work for the customers on the equipment when needed. All right, so I hope this provides some clarity. And if it doesn't, let me know what is not clear so I can answer your questions. If you did like this video, which why wouldn't you? Because, I'm funny. Like the video. If you do like it, like the video. If you think it's helpful to at least one person, share it with that person. Subscribe, hit the doorbell, hit the bell, and I will see you next time. So let's get back to work.